My name is Simon Lycett and I was born and brought up in Warwick. My parents still live there, my sister still lives there, and it's somewhere I have very fond memories of and return to as regularly as my slightly hectic work schedule allows. I was educated at Warwick School, so from the age of 7 I used to walk through Warwick Castle Parkland on my way to and from school. So I have very fond memories of snowball fights along the castle pathway and walking up in the snow to the carol service at the school. And I liked the fact that Warwick was relatively small and you got to know people, you got to know places and things in quite depth. And I do like detail, and so I've always been slightly obsessed with all of that aspect. And I think it was a huge advantage to be born and brought up and raised in a relatively thriving but relatively intimate rural area. My father's a great collector of vintage cars and motorbikes, and so lots of summer weekends were spent going on old car rallies, and you'd sit in a field in the middle of nowhere. And I have no interest in old cars and motorbikes, sadly. They're very beautiful, but I have no great interest in them. So I would go wandering off into the hedgerows and come back with some bunch of something random that I'd picked. That was of far more interest and inspiration to me than some smelly old traction engine. Since the age of about 14, I've had a job. I used to work at the Brethren's kitchen tea room in the Lord Leicester Hospital, and I used to just get the tips. And it was great fun, and I've always enjoyed the satisfaction of what I was able to achieve and earn myself. My paternal grandmother was a very creative woman. She had an amazing garden. She used to paint. She sadly died before I was old enough to appreciate all her talents. But I think it was her that inspired me, together with 2 ladies that used to live next door but one who were great gardeners. I was incredibly lucky where I was brought up in Lodge Crescent, where my parents still live, just off the Stratford Road in Warwick, that my neighbour Norma, number 13, who still lives there now, she used to teach floristry and flower arranging City and Guilds. And so having come fresh from St Nicholas's Park flower show, aged 7, it was to her that I turned, and I would go and sit at her side as she prepared things for her classes. She would do flowers for friends and neighbours' weddings. And it was with her that I learned all the rudiments of wiring, all the proper techniques. And gradually, from her, I was able to develop my own style with the knowledge, with the proper old-fashioned, old-school techniques that are still so valuable today. And I haven't ever had any formal training, but it was really with her and then with a florist called George Smith in York, who I wrote to as a child. It was between them they nurtured and encouraged me. And also I am very lucky. I do have an instinctive knowledge. There are very few things I'm very good at, but I do absolutely instinctively know how to put flowers together and how to create decorations. I'm very lucky that a lot of the events we have done have had some profile attached to them or have become something that has become known. And each one of them has bred and developed a little bit more publicity for us. I was asked to do the flowers for Elton John's 50th birthday party. That gained us publicity. I used to do flowers on a lot of television commercials. As a result of that, I was asked to arrange the flowers for Jim Henson's memorial service. He was the man that created the Muppets. And he died very suddenly and tragically, and New York had a very big splashy memorial service, so London needed to do something equally magnificent. Having done television commercials with some of the team from the Creature Shop where he worked, they asked me if I would be involved in creating the flowers for his memorial. And when they told me it was in St Paul's, I thought, oh lovely, St Paul's Knightsbridge, that really intimate little church, but it was actually St Paul's Cathedral. But the joy of it was in the days before health and safety, so my team and I were locked in overnight and just left to get on with it. So we turfed the aisles and had foxgloves growing everywhere. He used to live near Hampstead Heath and walk there every day with his wife, so we recreated little pockets of Hampstead Heath, and Big Bird walked down the aisle. And it was an amazing ceremony, and I designed a little sprig of rosemary tied with raffia that sat on each order of service, and the rosemary came from Lighthorn Herbs, who were the only people I could think of that could supply me with 600 sprigs of rosemary, because they used to sell them into supermarkets. And I have a huge sense of pride in what we do. I can remember the first time I was ever taken to a meeting at Windsor Castle when I was working for Her Majesty the Queen. It was on the occasion of the Queen Mother's 100th birthday, and I think Princess Margaret and Princess Royal each had a birthday that ended in a 0 or a 5. So it was quite a year for the royal family, and they decided to have quite a large semi-private party in Windsor Castle. And I was asked to attend the meeting, and the event organiser who working on it looked me up and down a few days beforehand and said, you will come to the meeting at Windsor and you might meet the Queen, so you may wish to wear a tie was, I think, the best that she could expect. And I turned up and you're told, oh, the Queen might be at the meeting, and I thought, well, I'm sure she's got far more interesting things to be doing. And we were being shown around Windsor Castle and the different rooms to work in, and then, just as everybody says, 2 rooms away a door opened and from the corner of your eye a corgi walks in, and then in walks the lady that is on your stamps and on your money, and it is a very surreal moment. It was wonderful at Chelsea Flower Show again this year. It's always such a huge privilege to work there for the BBC and for the RHS, but it was great to see the Midlands represented. Coventry and Warwickshire were there with the Leamington Spa Garden. Inspired, I felt, slightly by the sort of Jeffson Gardens, the whole pump house feel. It was absolutely beautiful, and I'm thrilled and delighted. They got a silver, they were robbed, they should have got a gold, and I hope they'll be back next year to keep Warwick on the map. We have Birmingham Municipal Gardens are there every year, so why can't Warwick and Leamington show themselves? And at the end of my workroom atrium we have a huge vast wall that's bright green. It's known as the Warwick Wall by everybody, and on it are many hundreds of tiny little lozenge-shaped wooden shelves that my father painstakingly cut out for me, that are all glued up the wall, and each of them has a little terracotta pot on them. And occasionally we change them, so at Christmas time there'll be a bauble or a sprout, and we put pumpkins on when it's Halloween, and Easter time they're filled with Easter eggs and primroses. So it's a great fun way to celebrate, have a bit of colour at the end of the workroom. I think it's quite extraordinary, my journey. I'm quite lucky that as a boy who was born and brought up on a 1960s estate in Warwick has ended up working where we do, doing the stuff that we do, working for Her Majesty the Queen, being flown to Mexico to work on parties, going to Japan, America. And a lot of it's down to a bit of luck, but most of it I think is down to hard work and persistence. I'm not very good at the word no, so if someone tells me I can't do something, it really makes me want to do it quite a lot more. And I don't really like being thwarted, and I'm an enormous control freak, so those 3 characteristics do really combine and make me the sort of character that's not really going to be put off by much. I think a lot of people's perception of Birmingham, of Coventry, parts of the Warwickshire area is of it being a bit of a concrete jungle, a bit of a urban area, and I think it's an incredibly rural space. I think having a Warwickshire flower show, be it at Warwick Castle, somewhere within the Warwickshire locality, would be a spectacular way of putting the Midlands on the map. It's the heart of England, and it would be a brilliant way to showcase the fact that it's actually a very beautiful, very rural area. It's the place that Shakespeare was inspired by. It's absolutely one of the most wonderful parts of the world, on the edge of London, on the edge of the Cotswolds, and it would be a brilliant way to showcase that we're not all about industry, we're not all about hard things. There is a great deal of natural beauty.